I installed a new BLUETTI EP800 with 3 B500 batteries to an existing solar system, to a microinverter solar system powered by Enphase. This is a complete install from unboxing to making the connections to turning on the system. If that's why you clicked into the video, you found the right one. Stick with me for a little bit. Let's go over exactly how I did it and start from the beginning. And before we do any type of install, we need to locate which of these circuits are important to us as essential loads. These are the breakers that will be connecting to our transfer switch. Because our current breakers are not compatible with the transfer switch, we need to make sure to purchase new breakers that are. Since all the circuits in the main panel are AFCI and GFCI protected, it was important to purchase dual function breakers for the transfer switch as well. With the option to back up 12 circuits in total with single pole breakers, I opted to back up 6 15 amp circuits and 4 20 amp circuits. I also purchased one 30 amp breaker for backing up the water heater as one of our essential appliances. And the reason that I purchased all of these GE style breakers and a 30 amp GE style breaker is because if we look right here, it tells us that we can install GE and they need to be THQL style. So if we look on the back side here, it's THQL. And if we look up here in the corner, it's THQL. So those are compatible with this box. Now we do have a 60 amp breaker I want to talk about. It's very important to always select the right breakers to go in the panel. Make sure they're compatible when you're doing that. And we're going to use this 60 amp breaker to feed the batteries when we don't have solar to charge the batteries. We're going to use an AC connection to actually charge the batteries up. When we do have sun out like today, then we'll charge those batteries with the sun power. Whether it's from the large array that I installed on the building or something like a mobile unit that I'm going to be building out maybe 2 to 4 kilowatts. And between the main service panel and the battery backup system itself, you'll want to install one of these AC disconnect switches. And especially if you're going to be installing this on the exterior, you'll want to install one of these. And I also purchased 2 DC breakers for the solar array that'll be coming in. It'll feed into this box. So we'll put these breakers in this box, and this will allow us to disconnect the DC power coming in to our battery bank. One 32 amp breaker and one 20 amp breaker. And because we have a unique situation, how the wires and how everything is feeding into the main service panel, just thought it was best that we purchase one of these wiring troughs. This is a 6x6 by 36 inch long wiring trough. And how that'll work is we'll install this and then run into this trough, and then we'll take our conduit and run into the different boxes that we have. And I've talked about the accessories that was unique to my situation, but when you purchase the BLUETTI package deal, you're gonna get an EP800, which is this one right here. And I got 3 B500 batteries because I got the package deal with 3 batteries. You can get it with 2 batteries, 3 batteries, or 4 batteries, and you'll get the transfer switch. And on this project, I actually have an opportunity to work with a local electrician on this. So tomorrow we're gonna bring in that electrician. He's gonna do that install, and then I'm gonna talk about everything that he did within that install. I just think it's important anytime you need to pull a permit, or if you can get a professional involved in a project like this, it's important to do that. It's not to say that I couldn't have done this as a DIY project, because I did install everything for the solar system and for our large shop. Even though I have an electrician coming, I wanted to save a little cash, so what I've done is go ahead and find out exactly where I want to put the electrical trough, the transfer switch, and the DC disconnect. I'm going to leave the AC disconnect up to the electrician for placement where the batteries are, but these are items that I could go ahead and place in, and they take a little bit of time to install simply because of the wiring that's coming in from the outside. I want to be able to make sure to wire this from the outside directly into the box. I want to make sure the trough can come down and connect into it, hopefully like that. And then the AC disconnect can go directly into the trough. So we can run the wires from here up and in, and then from the DC comes out, in, up through the trough and over to the batteries. This is what we got going on the outside. I did want to go through there with the DC inputs, but ultimately I decided to come off to the side and just run the conduit down. And then from the inside, we'll just punch through the back side of this box and come directly into it. So it was figuring out things like those that took me a little bit of time, and it saved a lot of money by, rather than having the electrician try to figure those out for me,
I wanted to figure that out, get it placed, and then we'll have him in tomorrow to do the install.
My electrician made the initial connections, which I'll talk about more later in the video. However, I could not place the DC disconnect where I wanted to, so I had to repair the wall. Of course, I couldn't get the old color match correctly, so I had to repaint the entire wall. I needed to get the batteries placed on the stand, and I wanted to make sure they were perfectly aligned vertically and offset exactly where I needed them, so I used a laser level to help me with that. And if you have any way of getting these batteries up off the ground so when you grab them, you can get them close to your chest, just start stacking them, I would highly recommend using whatever method you got. So I'm by myself, so I use my tractor to lift it up so I can grab them. But if you got two people, definitely use two hands on this. And as you can see over here in the corner, I've already unpacked one of these, but I kind of want to give you an unboxing to show you what's included. So you have to remove these first, and you got 4 of those. But then once you get it opened up, this is exactly what you're going to get. So these are just your cables and your connectors that come with the battery itself. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it in one package and put it out of the way. You got your end caps that you're going to put on the battery once you get everything secured and connected. And here's our battery. And of course, I don't have the real pretty BLUETTI text to show you from this side, but you can see it over there. And I'm about to grab this battery and put it on top of the other one. These are fairly heavy batteries, weighing anywhere from 140 to 150 pounds a piece. So you can kind of see the front there. Now I want to turn this around. So when I put it on top, this is facing outward. And nice and secure. When I was installing the base, I made sure it was level this way, but not this way, right? Because I want it tilted back toward the wall just slightly. So it's level when you put it this way. And it's important to keep the box, because right on the box itself, it states that you cannot return this in case you have this box. This is the EP800. These are the B500 batteries. So the batteries need something to actually convert all that power and use it as your home backup. And this is the unit to do that. So let's do an unboxing of the actual EP800. Again, you're gonna get all your cables and your connections that you need that's already included. And you'll have those end caps under the bottom as well. And here is the brains of the system. I feel like I need to be competing in a strongman competition or something. Oh boy, I'm not up high enough. All right. I was able to do it, but it is heavy. Anyway, we got the EP800, the B500, 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 and roughly 15 kilowatts of backup power. And I'm sort of visiting you from the future right now in this video because we've already got everything wired, got the system powered on. It's been operating flawlessly for a couple of days now. But I wanted to wait to this point of my install to actually address how we wired it, because I think it's important to understand how the BLUETTI EP800 actually works. And you can't understand the wiring until you understand how this works. So I want to talk about the 50 amp breaker that we installed, the 60 amp breaker that we installed, the AC disconnect, all of the circuit breakers that are feeding the essential loads, the two 50 amp breakers that are at the top of our transfer switch, and the lines that are going in for the backup and for the grid. And at the beginning of the video, I did forget to mention that I had to purchase the 50 amp breaker as well as the 60 amp breaker. So let's talk about the 50 amp connection first. That's connected with 6 gauge wire, comes up into our trough and then over into right here, this breaker. And this breaker will actually stay in the off position until we want to utilize pulling power from the grid to power these essential loads. The way that it's working currently is that we have this breaker turned on, which is using the EP800 and the battery backup system to power the essential loads. Now this is where it gets confusing. Once the batteries are charged to 100%, this acts as a pass-through. So we have that 60 amp breaker that's connected to the AC disconnect that's coming into the EP800, and then it does its thing to reduce that power from 60 amps back down to 50, sends it back over to the essential loads and feeds it through the grid. So now we're using grid power as a pass-through, and that's the settings that I have this set on, because I want the batteries to be sitting there at all times. When we have a power outage, that it will just snap and everything will stay on. We won't even know that the power went out for all of those 11 circuits. So it's a little bit confusing to understand that although we have it set on the generator side, we're still using grid power when the batteries are charged to 100%. And there's settings in the app that allow you to use the batteries versus grid power. So if you want to take the state of charge, those down to 20%, and then have the solar start charging them back up and use the battery power versus your grid power, you can do that. Currently, I just have it set up to where I want those to stay at 100% and use grid power as a pass-through. Mainly because I don't have the solar array hooked up currently. And I will show you this a little later in the video when I hook this up and what it looks like in the app. Now let's get back on track and talk about the 60 amp breaker that we have wired with 4 gauge wire that comes up into our trough, then back down into the AC disconnect switch. From the AC disconnect switch, it comes over and feeds into the EP800. And currently, that's my primary source of charging the batteries. However, if we disconnect this from the AC disconnect or the breaker, then the batteries will automatically switch over, and then we're going to start using power from the EP800 up to those essential loads. In my current configuration, the 60 amp breaker is very important because it will feed the power to charge the batteries, and it will feed the power as the batteries get to 100% to act as the source to power those essential loads. Ultimately, what I'm doing is using this as a standby generator. And there are a ton of different ways that you can configure this. That's my configuration. So that's why I want to talk about how I'm using this. And even though this is a different configuration, the way that I'm using it, that's all set in the app. The wiring stays the same, but it's important to understand what you can do with this system. You don't have to have it hooked to a solar system to have it work for you as a standby generator. And now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the breakers, because essentially all we've done is take the breakers from this panel and put them in this box. Disconnect your white line and your black line from the breaker. And those wires that you just disconnected are the wires that are running your plugs or your lights or whatever might be on that circuit. So now we need to run a fresh wire from that side to here and then connect it. So we'll connect the black wire to the black wire and the white wire to the white wire. Then we'll move over here and then we'll put in our breaker and connect the white and black line to whatever breaker that we want the circuit to be. So essentially all we've done is take a breaker from here and then move it over there. The reason you're seeing a lot of red wires over here are just because we changed the color of wire from black to red on all the 20 amp circuits. That's what we had on hand, so that's what we wanted to use. Didn't want to have to go out and buy new wire. You can just use the black wire for that as well, but you want to make sure that you're sizing that correctly. For all of the red wires that you see there, those are 12 gauge wire on 20 amp circuits. All the black wires that was going into the 15 amp is your 14 gauge wire. Now that leads me to talk about the 30 amp circuit. And to connect that circuit, we use 10 gauge wire and it powers a water heater. And hopefully that helps you understand the wiring and how the system works a little better. Let's move on. And just to go over what's included with each battery, you're going to get the 2 connection cables, your positive and your negative, the ground cable, a communication cable. You're going to have a couple brackets and a couple anchors that you can secure those to the wall. And they also include all of the screws that you're going to need to put the covers on, the ground screws, everything's in the little baggie that's included with it. Now that we have all the connections made into the inverter, I need to get the inverter connected to the batteries. And we're going to start with the very bottom battery and work our way up. So you'll feed your cable through like this and then make your connection. And the same goes for the positive cable. Just remove your caps, slide up through the handle, connect until you hear it snap, connect until you hear it snap. And with the provided ground cable, you'll connect it to the first battery and then to the second battery. The first connection is complete. That's battery 1 to battery 2. Now I'm going to connect battery 2 to battery 3 in the same fashion. And then I'll move on and connect battery 3 into the inverter.
For the communication cable, you'll start at port number 2 on your inverter and bring it down to the PCS port for the connection between the inverter and the battery. And this is a simple, just press it in, it'll lock. Same thing for this one down here. So the connection between the inverter and the battery has been made. Now to connect the rest of the batteries, we need to move over to that side. Once we reach this side, you're going to see link in and link out. So this is our pack link out. We're going to run this up through the handle, press in, and then as we move down, your out goes into your in for the next battery. And now you have the communication port connected between battery number 1 and battery number 2. And it's going to look like this when it's complete. Port 2 down to PCS port, then port out down to the next battery's port in, and then that battery is port out down to port in. And there's one more piece to the puzzle connecting the receiver to port number 1. And wherever you install this, whether you want to go low or go up behind the batteries or on the other side of the batteries, that's totally up to you, because if you look on the cover that goes on this right here, that cutout is on this side, so it's on the back side. So you can run your cable through here and then get to the port to connect it. Now, I don't want to do mine through this port because there's just too much going on right there. So on each one of the batteries, it has that same cutout. And as you put that cover on, you can run through that side on the back right here and then come up through the handle. So it's just managing the wires a little better. But however you would like to do that, it's totally up to you. That's how I'm going to do it. And I just think it's going to fit for my installation better. We have all the batteries connected from the bottom to the top and all the communication cables hooked up. Our final connection will be connecting the inverter to the first battery. And the connection between the inverter to the battery is a little different. You'll connect these to the battery so they snap in, but the actual connection to the inverter will use these bolts to connect it in. So always make sure that your power from the AC is turned off, your switch is turned off, and all of your power and every battery is turned off when you're doing any of this work. Always make sure the power is off. It's just safe and it's easy to do. And I'm going to start by connecting the negative to the inverter first. Now let's get the system powered up. First, you'll want to turn on the DC switch if you have solar connected. Next, you'll turn on all the breakers for the batteries. Press and hold the power button for roughly 3 seconds on any of the batteries and they'll all turn on. And you're going to get a couple flashing lights and sounds, but after 30 to 40 seconds, all your lights will remain green. Since that was a successful power up, let's get the covers installed. Now let's turn on the 60 amp breaker that's connected to the grid. Next, I'll switch to transfer switch breaker so that it's utilizing the BLUETTI system as the new source. And we're not finished yet because we need to activate the inverter in the BLUETTI app. If you don't have Wi-Fi available, it can be completed via Bluetooth. Once you get everything activated, it should look something like this. And before I end the video, I do want to talk about not having the DC inputs hooked up. That's because I tried to install it right here, but ultimately the AC disconnect had to be put here and the wires came over, so I couldn't put my DC disconnect there. I didn't want to put it on the back side of this door for this. I couldn't put it down here, I couldn't put it in here, and I couldn't put it too close to the window. So I really had no place to put it. I could not get a permanent connection to the solar system where I wanted it. So we had to scrap that idea for right now, but I will be using that temporary system I've built over there. I can connect all those into series, have 2400 watts, and I'll just run a wire over and up through that window and just bring it through the window and make it into the connection of PV1. And although I didn't get to connect my DC connection inside for a permanent connection, I did want to show you this hooked up to a temporary solution. So I've got the DC power turned on here and this connected to a temporary solar system. And what's very cool about this system is that right now it's AC coupled and DC coupled at the same time, because the solar system that I have on the top of that building comes in and feeds into here. And it does that right down there. So we have 10 kilowatts coming in, and this is back feeding into the grid. This here is coming directly from that 2400 watt system that I have out there temporarily, that's coming across the ground, running up through the window, up and in. So this is helping offset charging the batteries from direct solar system. That up there is AC coupled, this is DC coupled, all in the same system. And even on a cloudy day, we are producing power that helps offset what it takes to charge those batteries. So we can then use that energy that we're producing right now at a later time. So if you were in the same situation as I was, trying to find battery backup solution for an Enphase system or microinverters of any sort, then this turned out to be the perfect option for me, because it not only allows me to use my existing AC system, but if I want to tack onto that and help charge the batteries with something like I have outside, then it gave me the option to be more flexible. As time goes on, I'm gonna learn more about this system and I'll share with you guys, but I do know right now that you can connect it to a generator, you can DC couple it, AC couple it, all at the same time. So it's very versatile, and it's giving you a solution at nighttime or through daytime to have backup power, and a solution to charge those batteries if something happens to go wrong. So if your power is going to be out for an extended period of time, now you have multiple solutions to charge the batteries to power your house. And it doesn't matter whether you have an existing system or you're building a new system. This could be a great option for you. From years of experience, I've learned that projects don't always go exactly as planned from the beginning to the end. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal not having the DC input right here, and actually not even having it at all. I have to have a temporary setup. That's okay. I don't even have a permanent array set up outside for that anyways. So I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with having the location of the system here versus over on the side over there. It saved money. I actually found out that I like it better right here. And if you found this video helpful in any way, be sure to smash the thumbs up button, because it really does help me out a lot. I appreciate it. It lets me know that I did an okay job. And if you are looking for the parts that I used in my install, I'll have those in the description below. And if you have any questions, maybe on something I didn't cover, be sure to leave me a comment and I'll try to respond as quickly as possible. And if you're interested, I will be having future videos on the EP800. I'm going to have a full series on this, doing load testing and all sorts of different things that you might be interested in. If you are, maybe I'll catch you in my next video.